Praise be Jesus Christ. Welcome to all of you this afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking all of those who helped to put together this marvelous celebration of Holy Mass. In a particular way to Bill Ritchie, Stephen Quatella, Father Connolly, and the members of the St. Hugh of Cluny Society for their invitation to me to preside at this Mass. I'm Bishop James Massa, one of the auxiliary bishops in the Diocese of Brooklyn. I bring you greetings, affectionate greetings from Cardinal Timothy Dolan, our Archbishop, Metropolitan Archbishop here in the Archdiocese of New York. He sends his warm greetings. And a word of thanks to Father Wagner and to our beloved Dominican community here at St. Vincent Ferrer and St. Catherine's, to the members of the Constantinian Order of St. George who are here, and the members of the NYPD whose presence we cherish. To all of our seminarians, my brother priests, and those in consecrated life, our consecrated religious, your presence strengthens us today as well. This year's Lepanto conference on the theme of restoring the sacred could not be more timely and close to my own heart. An aspect of this theme must surely be the restoration of a sense of the sacred to our church's worship. In the preface to volume 11 of his Opera Omnia, which is on the theology of the liturgy, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI writes that the most profound cause of the crisis in the church today, in the church of the last 40 and 50 years, the most profound cause of this crisis lies in obscuring the priority of God in the liturgy, the priority of God. The emphasis in celebrating things human, all things human, has made us forget the sacred presence of God. As the sacred becomes more and more muted in the liturgy, the Holy Father observes, God then disappears from our common life in society. Let's be honest. The attraction to the extraordinary form of the Roman Rite, to the Latin Mass, has as one of its principal causes the hunger for the sacred. We all hunger for the sacred. Of course, for many years, groups like the Society of Catholic Liturgy and various religious communities have laudably encouraged a more reverential, a more aesthetically pleasing mode of expression in the new Mass, the post-Vatican II liturgy. I know, and I wanted to mention him as well, wonderful to be with Dr. James Wetzel and his Schola today. James works in both forms of the liturgy, trying to make it a more sacred, solemn celebration of the mysteries. But for many of our faithful today who are drawn to the Old Mass, the alternative celebrations of the Novus Ordo in many local parishes lack a sense of the sacred for them. The tone of informality, the all too facile blending of the sounds and images of pop culture with liturgical forms has only helped to underscore the ordinary in the ordinary form of the Mass. St. John Henry Newman, not yet St. John Henry Newman, but God willing, the Holy Father will canonize him this year, famously said that it takes 100 years to receive an ecumenical council of the Church. 100 years. We're only still 55, 56 years out from Vatican II. So there's more to come. on a matter so crucial as our encounter with the triune God in the church's worship, it's understandable that many of our faithful have become impatient. Many of us who remain convinced, as I do, I remain convinced of the potential of the Novus Ordo to be a powerful mediation of the sacred for the church of our time. But a dimension of the ongoing reform of the liturgy is its attention to the tonality and the inner logic of the forms that are found in the Missal promulgated in 1570. Today we offer a Mass in honor of the saintly Pope Pius V, the Dominican Pope. We honor him, we ask his intercession. The unified form of the Mass, sometimes called the Tridentine Mass, came about in 1570. Many commentators following the lead of Pope Benedict have urged a dialogue, or in the words of Cardinal Sarah, a reconciliation between the extraordinary form of the Mass and the ordinary form of the Mass. The new, for example, could restore such sacralizing elements as more use of Latin in the canon of the Mass, reception of Holy Communion on the tongue, and more generous periods of silence in the liturgy. The old might adopt a lectionary more like the new in its inclusion of a more expansive representation of the books of the Bible. Possible exchanges between the two forms. Obviously, more conversation, more historical investigation into the way prior developments have taken place within the rites needs to happen. But a dialogue, such a dialogue is necessary, not only to enrich the two versions of the Roman Catholic Mass, but also to demonstrate the power of tradition to both preserve and gently innovate in a spirit of faithfulness to what belongs, finally, not to the church, but to Christ himself. It's his prayer that we enter into in the Mass. It's his before it becomes ours. What's needed above all is a catechesis that deepens our grasp of the continuities across the historical development of the Roman Rite from 1570 to 1970, from Pius to Paul, from the EF to the OF. On most Wednesday afternoons in my largely Hispanic parish on 4th Avenue in Brooklyn, across the river, I teach religious ed to our children. My sessions with each of the grades usually focuses on some aspect of the sacraments or the church's devotional life. These beautiful families have such strong devotions to Our Lady and the saints. But lately I've found myself getting carried away in explaining to 7-year-olds and 13-year-olds the power of simple gestures like kneeling or folding one's hands in prayer. Why do we do this? Why do we do this, they ask. Children's questions can lead to deep reflection. I can see how such basic ritual acts not only express for them something of the sacred, they express the sacred, but they also serve as a catalyst for enabling them to encounter the sacred. When they fold their hands, they have to let go of their smart devices. When they close their eyes, the world of constantly bombarding images is hushed, is especially when they come into a church, beautiful church like this. Their minds are hushed by brilliant stained glass windows, by statuary, by beautiful images. They are quieted. They are hushed. The answer to Pope Emeritus Benedict and his lament about the loss of the priority of God in our worship and in our lives, the answer lies in part in a catechesis for all the faithful that focuses on basic liturgical gestures. Why do we do what we do? Why do we do what we do in the Mass? I suggest that 3 of these ancient gestures, clearly presumed in the old liturgy, need greater attention in the new Mass. They have to do with the hands and the feet, with the hands and the feet. And so in the remainder of my reflections this afternoon, I'd like to just say a word about each of these gestures, because they illustrate the very dialogue that can help restore the priority of God, without which our worship loses its transforming power. The first, folding one's hands in the upward gesture. Many of us remember being taught by religious sisters how to pray with folded hands, though sometimes their instruction took on the character of an urban legend. As I read somewhere, supposedly one reason the sisters taught us that hands must be folded up was so that our prayers would ascend to heaven. If they were pointed down, they would go to... If they were pointed sideways, sisters said, they bounce all over the room and go nowhere. Of course, the reasons lie deeper. The reason we fold our hands in perfect symmetry, pointing upward, has deep, deep symbolism and an ancient pedigree. The tradition has its roots in Jewish worship, going back to the time of the Babylonian exile, 4 or 5 centuries before Christ. In Roman society, the hands folded posture symbolized submission to a master. The folded hands of prisoners were shackled with vine or rope. A soldier captured on the battlefield could possibly avoid immediate death by joining his hands together. The message was like waving a white flag, saying, "I surrender, I surrender." Is it any wonder that in late medieval societies, subjects demonstrated their loyalty to vassals and princes by joining their hands together? In the Roman liturgy of ordination, we maintain that ancient rubric of the priest putting his hands inside the hands of the bishop as he promises respect and obedience to him and to his successors, the folded hands. When we Latin Rite clerics fold our hands in the liturgy and also make our thumbs, with our thumbs, the sign of the cross, what is the cumulative effect of our folded hands in these acts of prayer? We surrender. We submit our entire selves to Christ crucified, our King, who immolates himself in an unbloody manner, sacramentally but no less truly, as we come before him in the sacrifice of the Mass. The one in whose presence we are humbled to stand, in whose presence we are humbled to stand, elicits from us, he draws out of us not the gesture of hands merely clasped, but of hands gesturing surrender, obedience, adoring respect, and love. The second gesture, kneeling, We stand to listen. We stand to greet a neighbor. We stand to shake hands, to walk together with a stranger, or to offer payment in an exchange of goods. We stand for those things. But we kneel. We kneel when we're humbled in sorrow, or when we're awed by a beloved. How many men knelt before their newly won fiancés on Thursday, on Valentine's Day, to ask their hand in marriage? How many of us have dropped to our knees as we come face to face with a toddler so as to engage the child? How many grief-stricken firefighters and police officers fell to their knees on 9/11 when they realized a comrade had perished in the towers? And first responders. Do we really believe in the sacred encounter of the Mass? Do we really believe in what we say? That we are before the presence of the one who, though he was in the form of God, did not deem equality with God, but humbled himself, emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, coming in human likeness, humbling himself unto death, even death on a cross? Do we believe those words? Do we believe in the encounter with him in the sacred liturgy? And then he humbles himself on the altars of the world. The same divine Son of God humbles himself even further by becoming present in the tiny particles of consecrated bread and wine on the altar. He humbles himself. If he humbles himself, how can we not? Should we not respond to his baffling humility with like humility? Remember how St. Paul ends that hymn in the letter to the Philippians. Let every knee bend, let every knee bend, let every tongue confess to the glory of God the Father that Jesus Christ is Lord. Let every knee bend. Would not kneeling when receiving the Holy Eucharist be a warranted restoration of an older form? Standing as a gesture of praise certainly has its venerable precedence in the East. But wouldn't the biblical gesture of kneeling in penitence and loving adoration be a fitting or a filling out of our amen to God, who offers himself to us in humble love? We are filling out our amen. Finally, facing east. All of us facing the symbolic east, even if the altar is not placed along the eastern wall of the church, but our altar is today. That's the direction of the East River. So we are all facing east today. We'd all be oriented in the same direction during the Eucharistic prayer, the canon of the Mass. And that was the point. That was the point. Not that the priest had his back to the people, but that the whole assembly gestured toward the rising sun while waiting for the risen Son of God to approach. And he does. He most certainly does, in answer to the call of his bridal church. Herein lies the magnificent tension, the genius of the Roman Mass, with its power to transport all of us, its participants, to another realm. I need not rehearse for you, for this congregation, the arguments of Clement of Alexandria, of John of Damascus, of Cardinal Ratzinger, or Dom Alvin Reed. They've been endlessly commented on in scholarly essays and blog posts, especially since Cardinal Sarah's 2016 challenge at the Sacro Liturgia Conference in London. Remember, taken by priests to capture what the unoriented rubric seeks to convey. And remember, Dr. Massa recommended a cross being placed on the altar as a kind of compromise, as an appropriate prudential measure for our time, for our moment. But no matter what one does, practically speaking, the catechesis, the teaching underlying the rubric, that facing east, that teaching, what underlies it, needs to be promoted. Otherwise, the liturgy will continue to lose its orientation to the ever-approaching Son of God. Friends, we are about the Opus Dei. Right now, we are about the work of God, as St. Benedict describes it. It's the most important thing we can do in this world. The Lepanto of our time is a battle against the corrosive effects of a secularism that banishes the sacred from our churches, our rectories, and our Catholic homes. If we're looking for the deep cause of our awful crisis in the church today, of our present-day travails, if we're looking for the deep cause, we need look no further than the loss of contact with the sacred among our priests and people. We are, yes, in need of a renewal in personal holiness, yes. But we're also in need of the worship that brings us into contact with the all-holy God. Thank you, conveners, for gathering us this day for a reorientation to the most beautiful thing this side of heaven. May our time together fortify us for the challenges ahead, and may it encourage us to go deeper into the one holy Catholic and apostolic faith, which is always the source of our hope and our joy, now and forever. Amen.